welcome to my YouTube channel. I am Katrina Jackson and I love to geek out about all things photography. I wanted to start off by thanking you for joining this conversation. My gift to you for joining this conversation, I have a freebie right now and it is on mastering open shade. I'm really excited about that freebie and I'm really excited about that topic, which is what we're going to be discussing today. So I don't want to keep you guys very long. These videos are going to be pretty to the point so that I'm not taking up too much of your time and so that you are able to get back to work. I'm also very passionate about teaching other photographers and providing some kind of information that they're able to implement in their business right away. So I really hope that you find something that you love about this conversation and that you are able to implement it in your business right away. And then also, don't be a stranger. Let's always keep the conversation going. You can, as always, leave comments and I will be sure to get back to you guys. I'm going to start off by sharing a slideshow. This slideshow has my on-location lighting pictures and then also a few studio shots. The reason why I'm sharing the studio shots is because I just wanted to show that my on-location natural light and my studio work are cohesive and they go hand in hand together. I will be talking more about my studio work in another video, but I wanted to just give you guys a little intro of my work and so that you guys can, so I can lead by example so that you can kind of see what my images look like. I talk with my hands, y'all, so if you're going to be here for the long haul, y'all gonna have to get used to it. But I wanted to just give you guys a little bit of a little backstory. So I have been a photographer for 11 years and I have always shot on location for the most part. Especially in the very beginning, I did not have the studio. This was our living room in our first home. So over time we've built a second home and then now this is my home studio. But so because I did not have a studio, I shot on location and that's very common for people to just, be on location shooting. So I didn't think anything about it. It's not a big deal. And that's kind of how I created my own style, was by shooting on location. So I've always shot with, I'm not 100% sure if I've always shot with a reflector, but I've definitely always shot natural light. And I definitely think in the beginning, I didn't necessarily know what kind of light I liked. I just knew I had to be outside and I knew certain areas that I liked, and then I created my style around that. So as I got to be a better photographer and I started really looking at my work, I started realizing, the certain locations that I was picking and the light that they produced. And what I found was that most of those locations was offering like an open shade situation. And if you are new to that term, I don't know what the actual definition is, but I'm going to tell you what my definition is. So the best example I can give is if there is a tree and there is shade, you are going to want to put the subject right on the edge of that shade. If you go too much into the shade or by the trunk of the tree, it's going to be too dark. So you want it to be, again, on somewhat on the edge. And the reason for that is and also the sun is very important too. So you I like to shoot backlit. So most of the time the sun is behind that tree. And the reason for that is because if the sun was right in front of the subject, it is going to be too bright. They're going to be like what we call a hot spot. It's going to be way too bright. So you want that light there. And again, if you take a picture of your phone and see a tree, you're going to see that like hot spot, as you will. But that light is bouncing back into your subject's face. And it's beautiful when the sun is behind the subject. It can also be like off to the side. It doesn't necessarily have to be behind the subject. But most of my locations, I mean, as you can see here, the sun is behind the subject. And there's usually somewhat of a barrier. So it's not like sun and subject. There's somewhat of a barrier providing a like a bokeh effect. Like this here, I always angle my subject in the wall so that it falls off and it blurs really nicely. And it's definitely something that I have like perfected over the years. It's definitely my style. I pick locations based off of those things. And then more about like the journey. So I don't know if it's the mom in me, but I feel like I see people, for instance, I photograph seniors, teens and seniors. So teens and seniors are youthful, and I shoot a lot of girls, and I have 2 girls myself, and I feel like when I see my girls, I view them in beautiful light. I see the brightness that they offer the world. So I do feel like my work showcases that in these girls. They're getting ready to graduate high school and they have their whole life ahead of them. The future is so bright, and that is what my work represents. So that's just a little bit of my backstory. I could talk about the light all day long. I could talk about like my eyes and the sparkle. That's a thing around here. But we are going to dive into some key points on how to shoot better in open light or open shade. So for years and years, I feel like I've been around the block for a minute, and it's almost like if you say you're a natural light photographer, people are like, oh, well, that's the easy way out. I have seen a lot of people that shoot natural light and they don't always nail it, right? So there are ways to nail natural light. Sometimes I think like if you're shooting downtown, all of that concrete, that's a gimme. And some people can't always get it right. They may put this, and art is subjective. Photography, let me just start by saying that. Photography is subjective. So what I may like, someone else may not like. Someone else may want their images dark and moody. I get that. I do get girls that are like, oh my, I would like, more dark and moody. And I'm like, okay, well, have you not seen my work? But I usually pray. And then what usually happens is, I don't know if it's the universe, but something usually happens. It's cloudy that day, or it rains that day, and the clouds, like it's been perfect. Or if someone does tell me that, like, hey, you know what, I don't really want them like bright and sunny. I am more kind of a moody girl. Okay, I won't shoot you so bright. I'll dim that light for you just a little bit. But anyways, let me dive back in. So one of my biggest, it's not even a secret, is a reflector, and the bigger the better. So I have this huge reflector. Usually the moms are off to the side holding this reflector. And remember when I was talking about that tree and the light is bouncing light back in their face? I am using that reflector to bounce more light back in their face. Anymore, you can somewhat create this in Photoshop, but what you cannot really fake in Photoshop is the effect that reflector is doing to the eyes. So it is creating a catch light in those eyes. And a lot of people love the catch lights that my reflector creates. And that's very intentional. I have a lot of moms that are like, oh, the eyes, they just sparkle. that's intentional. Because again, I feel like our eyes and our smiles tell the story. And so I want a big, beautiful smile. I also do like a serious smile. The girls like the serious smiles. But the eyes also tell that story. So a reflector for me is huge. It is going to be bouncing that light back. There are times where you don't need a reflector. Again, like I was talking about the natural reflectors. So concrete. I feel like water has a lot of natural lights that reflects back. I love a good tree line or a good spot that has a tree line, because then you can have the sun on the behind it, and then that bokeh that it's creating, especially at sunset. I typically shoot about 3 to 4 hours before sunset. And again, that's intentional. That's the kind of light that I love to shoot in. I feel like it's a very clean light. The very first location is my harder light. And a lot of times I will shoot my urban locations in that light, because you've got the buildings and things that will block the sun. But cloudy days, all clients, okay, I'm not gonna say all clients, but we think of a perfect session. We're thinking like of a perfect session is gonna be like a beautiful sunset. Some of my favorite shoots are the cloudy days, because then you can take that whole sun has to be behind the head out of the conversation. If it's a cloudy day, we can now shoot at every single direction. It's a very clean, even light. And for my girls that have glasses, I usually pray that they have a cloudy day. There's a girl, I don't know if I can turn it right there. She had glasses on, gorgeous. And because it was cloudy, that reflector didn't bounce light back in her. Like, it wasn't creating a glare. So don't be scared of cloudy days. Cloudy days are some of the best days to shoot in, honestly. And then I've already talked about youthful. The reason why I like open shade and natural light is because I just feel like it goes with my clients. It goes with how I see my clients, and it goes with the kind of light that I'm kind of trying to create for the moms. And they just eat it up. I mean, I do too. I'm a sucker for some good, clean, natural light. And then I've talked about the natural reflectors, which is concrete, water. There's other things too, like if a building is white. I'm trying to think here. So open shade, I've talked about open shade. I just thought of like brick. So brick sometimes is a little tricky. If it's white, then great. But sometimes like red brick creates a color cast. That's something that we need to be very like knowledgeable on too. So the tree line, you're going to get a little bit of a green cast. You have to know how to correct that in post. Again, that reflector is going to help a little bit because it's bouncing light in their face. So it's going to help it a little bit, but it is something you're going to need to be able to know how to correct later. And then also just knowing, okay, like there's a couple buildings in town that I don't shoot on because I have shot them a couple times and it's just an awful color cast. But what's crazy is the building right across from it. It has this beautiful brick, and it's one of my favorites. Actually, it's that one right there. The building across from it is this red brick, and it's literally probably like less than 10 feet apart. That other building does not photograph like this one. So you do need to like test out your locations. Test them out through, okay, so, I got a good bonus for y'all. So open shade also changes throughout the year, right? So the sun moves throughout the year. So I am one of those people, again, I'm passionate about my light. Love good light, y'all. So certain times of year, I go to different locations because of the light. I can go to those locations all year round, but the time may be better in the spring versus the fall, things like that. So you really have to pay attention. Like, I'm not one of those girlies that can just wing it. Like, I have a shoot coming up and I know she wants the creek and the creek has been down. So I went there yesterday to see, okay, is the water back up? How is it? doing. Also, because this time of year, the sun's in a different spot, it's a lot darker because it like usually creeks are more shaded. And then also with it getting darker so much sooner, I might have to go there as a first location than a last location because the light is changing so often. So I think that's something too that I didn't actually intend on talking about, but your light really also matters about the time of day you're shooting, which we all know that. We know morning light, noon, and evening is vastly different. But even within that 4-hour window of when I'm shooting, my locations will vary throughout the year. So that's something to pay attention to. Once I started shooting at my go-to locations and I started realizing, okay, like this is what I like, this location, like I love this location, but it doesn't necessarily look good if I shoot it last because the sun has set too much. But if I shoot it second or third, it looks like this. Once I started paying attention to that kind of, those results is when I really was able to fine tune my work and my portfolio and the kind of locations that I like. So another tip that I want to talk on, and I know it is mentioned in more detail in my freebie, is talking about like hot spots. And this comes across a lot when you're shooting with trees. So I know I keep referring to this photo here, but let's say there's a couple of spots that I have, and I know sometimes the leaves will create like a shadow on my client. So for instance, she has a hat on, so there isn't one, and it may have not been one there anyway, but there are some locations that I have that you will get that like shading peeking through. I pay very close attention to that. Sometimes I will just fold and be like, okay, you know, I can't make it perfect today. But for the most part, I try not to have those hot spots because that's usually where your eye goes first, is those hot spots. So again, my locations, I am looking for ways that I don't have that. A lot of times you will have that when you're shooting a pathway. And in that case, you just move your client forward or back or to the side. And I literally say that, like I will have them, I'm like, okay, stand right here. Now face me. And then I'm like, okay. And I'm looking to see like what's shaded. And then if I have to move her forward, I'll move her forward. I have to move her back. And I'm like, a little bit over to the right, a little bit left. Okay, perfect. I don't necessarily care if you can see it on the ground, but I just don't want it to be on her. Because again, that's where the focus goes. So yes, it's on the ground, but your eye isn't necessarily going to go to the ground because you are going to be looking at her beautiful face or his beautiful face. So that's another little tip that I have. And then also backlit. So I typically will shoot backlit, again, with a tree line. It's very hard to do if there is nothing between behind the subject and the sun. So typically you'll have to use like your hood or like your hand, like the little cupping thing, or technique, I shouldn't say thing, cupping technique. But a lot of times I will just try to angle them a little bit and have like a little bit of a tree line. So that is all I really have on shooting an open shade. Like I said, there is way more information in the freebie, so feel free to download that. And then also I am actually teaching more in depth on mastering open shade in the Peak Summit, which launches next week. You can sign up right now still to get tickets for the next week when it goes live. So if you want more information on that, I will also link that in the description. I am going to let you guys go because this is longer than I had planned on it, but I told y'all I like to geek out about photography, and light is one of those things that I am very passionate about. So I could talk about light all day. Talk to y'all later. Bye.